Hello and welcome to Insights, the podcast with your host, Joe Parnay. Join me in this deep exploration of our personal journeys from ambition to meaning, where we stop living life fast and start living life deep. This is a journey of waking up and realizing that our lives have never been about us, but about others. True success leaves positive ripple effects on other souls. I believe that success needs to be redefined from our own personal ambitious endeavors to be redefined as the value that we leave and give to others around us. Join me now as we begin this journey to deeper connections, even more fulfillment, some fun, curiosity, life, love, and all good things. Your deeper journey from ambition to meaning starts right now. Well, hello and welcome to episode 40. 40, I can't believe it. So I appreciate for so many of you that have come along in the journey, on the podcast journey with me. I deeply appreciate it. And there are some, nearly 70 5-star reviews now on Apple Podcasts. And if you've been listening and tuning in and loving this, I would love for you to go over to Apple Podcasts and give me a 5-star review. If it's your truth, I would love for you to do that. So I hope you're all well. And what we're going to do today is I'm going to share some thoughts on the power of the narrative, And what I mean by narrative, we all know what the word narrative means, of course. The context I'm referring to here is the narrative of our life, the story that we tell ourselves about what our life is all about. And what I want to share with you here is that, the narrative that we live our life by is extremely powerful. It's very, very real and can trigger a lot of us into different emotional states depending on how challenged our narrative has been challenged by other narratives, say, for example. So this is an important conversation because I remember at a training once I was sharing with a group of beautiful people. I said that if you are a hammer, everything will look like a nail. If your essence is that you're like a hammer, then everything will look like a nail, regardless of whether it is or whether it isn't. That's the hammer's truth. And our narrative is exactly the same, is that our narrative puts a spin, a nuance, a frame, a color, a flavor, a view of the world that is unique to us. And I think one of the most powerful aspects of a narrative is that we need to have a very healthy respect of all the narratives around us. And as we can all appreciate, of course, in the current situation with the COVID situation and the whole scenario of the disease and the shutdown and the restrictions and all the different rules coming into play, it's certainly triggering off many narratives out in the marketplace and out in the communities and out in businesses and out in the street perhaps. And I guess one thing that coaching has taught me immensely is that whenever I've been coaching someone, I'm entering their world of their narrative. And the mission of a great coach is to have a healthy respect and appreciation and perhaps even almost an understanding of where their narrative is coming from. And of course, from a coaching context, it's about checking in on their story or their narrative or their belief system, which is part of that story or narrative, and to see if it's aligned to the results that they are wanting. So for example, in coaching space, we say that if a client wants to have a healthy relationship, then what's his story and belief systems or narrative around what relationships mean? And I remember clearly coaching this particular fellow who had a narrative that his life had shown him that, or his experiences had demonstrated to him that all relationships are restrictive. And that was the essence of his belief system in the context of relationships, right? And yet this fellow said to me that he wanted to have a close relationship with he wanted to find a woman that he could spend, a lot of time with and maybe the rest of his life with. And I shared with him, well, currently your state of affairs in terms of your psychological affairs, your story, your narrative, your belief system around relationships is not going to give you that outcome. In fact, what it's going to do is give you a very frustrating outcome because it's going to be a different outcome to the one that you want, right? Anytime we experience an outcome that's different to what we are wanting, it can be frustrating. So the coaching session with him went along the lines of, him becoming aware of him labeling relationships as restrictive, where that came from, why he did that, what he was getting out of that, and then changing that to become more aligned to what he was wanting. So sometimes, our narrative, look, our storyline, very much either amplifies or minimizes what we see in the world. And it's just the good old adage to, if you buy a red mini, suddenly there are red minis everywhere. And as I've shared in other episodes, I think, when my wife and I, when Silvana and I were pregnant with twins, when Silvana was pregnant with twins back in 2008, it was astounding how many women we met who were not only pregnant, but pregnant with twins. It was incredible. I mean, it defied the distribution curve of how many women are out there pregnant with twins, and these days, like, it's been ages since we've met someone who is pregnant. Now, there can be all kinds of understanding around that. It could be, oh, well, that's because, you're both 50 and the people you're surrounded by are mostly 50. And therefore, you're not having babies because you're all parents and you've got older kids. That could be one way of explaining it. The point I want to make is there are so many ways of explaining it. But the point is that it's our narrative that is the most powerful contributor to what we will notice or stop taking noticing of out in the environment of family, the environment of business, the environment of walking down the street, whatever it might be. So I want to bring awareness. The purpose of this particular episode is to bring a sensitivity or an awareness to our own narrative. And so many of us are trapped by our historical data. We're trapped by the history of our experiences. We're living in the shadows and echoes of what we believe to be true about ourselves. And here's the thing. This is going to sound, well, I don't know, I guess I'll share this at the risk of being misunderstood. And that is that our narrative is not real. It's real in the context of our experience. So, for example, someone who is experiencing a lot of anger or depression or anxiety in their life, let's be very clear that the experience of that anger, that depression, or that anxiety is very real in the experience that that person's having. But let me separate experience from reality, because, which I know flies against what I just said, but if you can just follow my thread of thought here, and that is that none of us actually experience reality directly. We only can experience our experience of reality. And the experience of our experience of reality is that we get to experience our narrative. That's what we get to experience. So what's contained within our narrative? Our values, which is what I define as our emotional compass. It's all of the convenient assumptions that we've made about all kinds of things. And a convenient assumption is known as a belief. It's determined by our memories, or influenced by our memories, influenced by our defining moments, influenced by where we've been either really, really hurt in our past or where we've been really lit up in our past. All of these aspects of memories, which are incredibly distorted, by the way. Lots of memories are distorted. I still remember so many things when I was a kid, or, from the ages of whatever, 5, 6, 7 years of age, playing in the backyard by myself where we used to live. I remember also my early teens, and all, like you do, you'd remember all different phases and stages of life. And I can tell you that all of us distort those memories, not consciously. It's just the nature of memories. We distort them according to our experiences that we are having in our life right now or moving forward. So the point I want to make is that be aware of the story that you tell yourself. Be aware of the story. And I'm not here to say the stories are bad, by the way. I'm here to tell you that stories aren't real. I'm here to tell you that the experience of the story is real, but the reality is the experience that's real, not the thing that's real. I hope I'm making sense here. So I'll say it again. We can't experience reality. We can only experience our experience of reality. That second experience, the experience of the experience, is real in the experience, but it's not ultimate reality. It's not the reality of everyone else. So I believe that as we mature, as men and as women, as we mature through the wisdom that I trust and hope that we are all, building in our lives through our experiences, that we become aware that we've got the power to reset our narrative. to redefine, to redesign our narrative of where we're going. There's so many different decisions that, we all make in life. Decisions from little, micro decisions of what am I going to have to eat next, all the way through to, macro decisions about family or about what kind of work you want to do, or, financial decisions, or it could be, significant, geography decisions, like where you're going to live or where do you want to live next, or depending on how you look at life and all that kind of thing. So our narrative influences all of our focus points. Our narrative influences what takes our attention in life, which are our focus points. Our narrative affects the quality of our choices. It affects our decision making. It affects the flavor of all of our relationships. And so many people live their narrative by default. And what I mean by that is that they don't question the narrative. They're trapped by as I said just a few moments ago, they're trapped by the historical data of their life. They're trapped by the history of what their life has shown them, apparently. So the point to this particular episode is I just want to bring to your awareness, what is your narrative? Are you happy with your narrative? Is your narrative providing you the kind of life that you are genuinely enjoying? Is it fulfilling the way you're living your life? Does it have meaning? Are you surrounded by what you would define as fine people? Are you around people who are like you? Are you around people that you genuinely love and want to be with? As much as we're restricted at the moment and all the rest of it, but that's beside the point. The point I want to make is what is your narrative? Is it bringing you joy, or is it bringing you hell? Is your narrative bringing you flow, or is it bringing you disruption? Is your narrative bringing you fulfillment, or is it bringing you frustration? At the end of the day, I'm here to tell you that it's your story, our stories, your story, my story, our stories is what determines how we experience in life, what we experience in life, what we focus on in life, what we notice in life. And like I said, if our story is one of being a hammer, then everything will look like a nail to a hammer. And the hammer will behave inappropriately at times because it's trying to nail the nail, and the nail ain't a nail, if you know what I mean. So anyway, this is a bit of a rabbit on, but you get what I'm saying. I hope you get what I'm saying. The point is, as I said, to become aware of your narrative. And we can reset this at any time through awareness. I've often shared, and other teachers have shared with me, that 95% of this journey is awareness. So by becoming aware of the story that you're telling yourself, do you need to, how many things in life need to remain the same, and how many things in life need to change? What parts of your life need more stability, and what parts of your life need to be shaken up, to stimulate even more growth. So this is all linked to our narrative. It's linked to our story. Now, I'm going to now go into a little bit of esoteric, woo-woo, off-road, organic kind of free-range conversation here, or a thought or an insight I want to share with you. And that is that, for what it's worth, and I think that, how do I say this? Our freedom, our ultimate freedom, is to realize who we really are, to connect with the divinity of ourselves. Now, what I'm saying here might seem disconnected to what I've been talking about, but if you just bear with me, you'll see how it's all connected in a weird way. The divinity within us, the spirit, the essence, the consciousness is, I believe, who we really are. And that our narrative is a temporary experience that we're having as a human being to experience whatever it is that we're experiencing in our lives, for whatever purpose that might be. And most of the time we won't know what that purpose is until well after the fact. When we reflect on our past, that's when things start to sort of make sense to us a little bit more. But the purest of freedoms is when we're in connection to that divine self. And I'm going to tell you, I've struggled all my life to find what that is. And I've got a concept of it. I've got an appreciation of it. I've got a wanting of it. I have a desire of connecting with that divinity. But from a real life experience perspective, I haven't experienced that yet. And that's because I've been looking in the wrong places. because I've been focused on my narrative. I've been focusing on my history and my future and my present and trying to work out where's the divine in all of this. The divine can't be found in your narrative. The narrative is the journey of the ego. Our narrative is a journey of our personality, of our personhood, of our ego personality. That's not where that's not where divinity lives. Now we can say, but there is, Joe. There's divinity everywhere around us, and there is, in the form of a leaf on a tree, in the form of an innocent child, or divinity is actually everywhere. It's even in the form of the most evil of all characters that you could possibly imagine in your life. Because if it's unconditional and it's everywhere, that covers everything. And the point I want to make is that with narratives, our narrative is a temporary experience. It's not who we really are. I reckon that all of us have got the capacity to realize that we are our own ultimate source of entertainment. We are our own source of the ultimate entertainment. And it's very healthy to allow yourself, to give yourself permission to have a real laugh at yourself. I laugh at myself all the time. And I laugh at the ridiculousness of some of my thoughts. I laugh at how sometimes I just take everything so seriously. I laugh at how sometimes, I don't know, I just laugh at all these different thoughts. I don't laugh at everything, but I laugh at a lot of stuff that's going on in my mind at times. Because I realize that when I die, when my body stops breathing and my consciousness transforms into something else, whatever that something else is, that the narrative ceases to exist. It becomes a distant memory, it becomes a dream, it becomes something hazy, it becomes something unimportant. And hence the reason why there's a delicate balance between taking responsibility in your life and not taking it too seriously, right? Anyway, this has been a very organic, unplanned conversation with you live. As my thoughts come into my head, I thought I'd share them with you. And just be aware of the narrative in your life, because it has a lot of power to determine what you'll open yourself to and what you won't open yourself to into the future. Possibilities, whatever those possibilities are. And why should we remain slaves to our stories and history? Why can't we just press the reset button and redesign and reconfigure and respark and restart and create a narrative that is different for the next phase of our lives? Anyway, just some thoughts, and I'm not sure whether I've made any sense at all here. And if any of you have gotten something out of this, and feel welcome to send me comments and make some comments on my Facebook fan page or anything like that. You're welcome to go there. The Facebook fan page, of course, is at Joe Parner Insights. Anyway, this is just about the power of the narrative. So be aware of your story. Don't be a slave to your history. Don't be a slave to your story. And make sure that, we all need a story. We all need a story. We can't live without a narrative of some kind, because that's where our identity is. That's where we find our values being lived. That's where we find all of our meaningful experiences. It's through our narrative that we have context around our relationships. So I'm not saying to get rid of narrative. What I'm saying is be aware of where your narrative might be holding you back, and how you and I are completely and utterly empowered to change that narrative with conscious choice, with conscious awareness. So it is aligned to where you are at now. And because, as I shared in this podcast episode, so many people live their life by default, which are narratives that are well and truly expired, which no longer exist. So anyway, I'm going to wrap up. Thanks for listening to my rabbiting on today. This has been a bit of a rabbiting kind of a podcast episode for episode number 40. So thank you for listening, and looking forward to reconnecting with you in the next episode. Bye for now. Enjoy. See you. I'm Joe Parner, and you've been listening to Insights, the podcast. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. You can now follow my insights on Facebook and Instagram. Thank you so much for joining me, and I'm looking forward to being with you again very soon in the next episode of Insights, the podcast.